The pastor of a church in the Edmonton area is under arrest for violating public health orders, repeatedly holding sermons that exceed Alberta's capacity limits.
The judge will make his final decision to grant Pastor James Coates bail Friday morning. His lawyers tell City News if the pastor is denied bail, he'll remain locked up.
Pastor James Coates was arrested and sent to prison a couple of weeks ago in Canada. What did he do? He held a church service. Coates was denied bail. Apparently, he is set to be released soon. He is still facing at least one charge. His wife, Erin, said he had a very tough time in jail. He was placed in a 2-week quarantine, only allowed to leave the cell twice for 15 minutes each time.
I think our freedoms have just been slowly stripped from us and so slowly over time that we didn't even realize it. And so when something like a health order is put in place that takes away your freedoms, it's not shocking to people, and it really should be shocking to people that there is a pastor in jail right now.
Us for his own glory. There's a God who sees the actions of all men, and he waits.
His church is opening without him. In fact, his church is opening in solidarity with him. We've had Sheila Gunn Reid there the last couple of weekends documenting it. Church is packed. So whether he's released or not, that church is packed. It's not correlated to whether or not he's released. In fact, it might even be a reverse correlation. They're there because he's in jail.
This is the consequence of people blindly accepting whatever politicians tell them and just blindly grasping for this illusion of safety when the hard data, the Alberta Health Services data, Statistics Canada data tells us that COVID is not an unusually deadly killer, and it's not something that everybody should be afraid of. And it would just make far more sense to protect the vulnerable, which is, you know, if you're 82 years old and you're sick and you're elderly and you're in a nursing home and you already have, cancer, emphysema, heart disease, what have you, then those are the people that we should be protecting. But to violate our human dignity and our human rights and our fundamental freedoms by not being allowed to have your parents over for Christmas dinner, it's just appalling. And things will get worse as long as the public is complacent and continues to buy into this fear-mongering that is just not grounded on facts.
This case in Alberta is going to be different. We expect to be cross-examining the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Dina Henshaw, and for the first time in 12 months, she's going to have to answer some tough questions because all she's been getting in the last 12 months are easy softball questions from biased pro-lockdown media that don't ask her tough questions about things like how many lives are being destroyed by lockdowns, and what kind of a horrible impact are lockdowns having on our mental health, our physical health, the mental health of children.
The bigger problem, though, is that Jason Kenney's laws and policies have put the pastor into this situation where he has to choose between following his conscience or getting out of jail.
It's such a blessing to be here with you today. I'm so thankful for all of the love and support that you've shown to me, to my family, all of the men that I could have ever asked to be by my side are, and it's just such a blessing.
We are following some breaking news this morning just west of the city.
RCMP are on scene and crews are putting fences up around Gracelife Church. Our Kim Smith joins us live now with the latest.
Yeah, I'm here outside Gracelife Church. AHS is confirming that it has blocked access to the church by putting fencing around. RCMP are also on scene here. We know that there are supporters on scene here from Gracelife Church. More and more cars are showing up.
When they started to, what time did you, yesterday when they started putting the fence up, how did you find out about it?
I got texts from our administrative guy because his phone was going off like crazy because our alarm system was being set off, and so he just let us know. that that's what was happening. And my initial response was, a little bit of excitement. I think that we have demonstrated clearly that the threat to Alberta is not COVID-19. It is AHS. We have demonstrated that the real threat to Albertans are the lockdown measures.
Right.
And so we have shown them to be weak and incompetent. And the fact that they've had to close down our facility is ultimately for the purpose of ending the embarrassment. We have met for 37 Sundays without a single COVID-19 case, let alone an outbreak. They can take our facility, but we'll just find another one.
Praise to the Lord, the Almighty, the King of creation. Oh, my soul, praise Him, for He is thy help and salvation. Let the amen sound from His people again. Let me
The Justice Center represents Pastor James Coates and Gracelife Church and a whole bunch of other churches, by the way, across Canada. The Alberta government is now famous around the world for being the Conservative government that threw a pastor in jail for holding church services as normal. Yet another international headline putting Alberta on the map. A provincial government that seized a church and has it guarded with paid security and dozens of federal law enforcement officers.
It is well with my soul. It is well. It is well with my
The highest law in the land is the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and that's higher than any of Dina Hinshaw's health orders.
We are joined by Mr. Jay Cameron, Litigation Director at the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, which is representing Pastor Coates and Gracelife Church. Welcome back to Forum Daily, sir.
Thanks for having me on, Nima.
So can you walk us through what exactly happened on Wednesday at Gracelife Church?
Nima, I'm not going to mince any words here. What happened on Wednesday is a further escalation by the health tyrants running the province of Alberta, and they're out of control. On Wednesday, AHS and the RCMP imposed a closure order on the church and changed the building locks and erected a double barrier fence to prevent people from entering. And that makes you wonder, well, what are they trying to prevent? Is there organized crime in there, a meth factory? No, this is all about stopping people from peacefully gathering to have a church service. And now also what occurred Wednesday is that the Crown has asked for an adjournment informally at this point in time of the May 3rd trial for Pastor Coates. Of course, the Crown has had 12 months to gather its evidence to justify the destruction of Albertans' lives through the lockdowns, the ill-advised lockdowns, but now they're asking for more time. We have this thing in Canada called the Constitution. It's the supreme law in the land. Last time I checked, it still says that. And government officials and the RCMP are operating in accordance with public health official guidelines, as opposed to taking into account the restrictions in the Constitution. They're not paying those any mind whatsoever. And so, no, the answer is that capacity limits are arbitrarily set. They're different from province to province, even though the virus is the same. They're set by an unelected health bureaucrat who changes them at her whim in Alberta. And the other thing is that Dr. Hinshaw hasn't justified her measures. She hasn't justified them to the legislature because she's not required to. She doesn't have to provide them with a report on the basis for her decision or why she's doing anything or the science behind it or any contrasting opinions. And she hasn't justified them to the public. she just gets up in front of the TV cameras and fearmongers about projected cases and ICU capacity, and many times she's been proven wrong with respect to these projections.
We have put the Alberta government on notice that Chief Medical Officer Dina Hinshaw will be subpoenaed to appear in court.
I'm adjusting, and I can't quite put my finger on what the adjustment is or why I'm feeling it's an adjustment, but it's an adjustment. And I'm thankful to be out, and I'm thankful to be here, and I'm looking forward to just putting one foot in front of the next and taking it one day at a time.
Par with these repressive regimes that 11 months ago we used to look down on as morally inferior, and now we're locking up pastors, we're locking up Canadians coming back from abroad, and surprising level of support for those measures. It's quite amazing. It's a lot of people don't seem to cherish freedom or the free society at all. That's scary.
I mean, I had mentioned in my intro that if I were to tell the details of the story without giving the location, people would assume I was talking about one of those regimes you just mentioned, North Korea, China, Cuba, but here we are in Canada.
This is an aggressive escalation by government tyrants in Alberta, namely the public health officials and Premier Kenney, who have increasingly targeted anybody who defies these draconian public health orders. The government has refused to scientifically justify those orders to the legislature and to the public, but they fearmonger constantly about cases. And now, because this church has remained open in defiance of some of these measures, you have the argument, which is always the argument of last resort to tyrants, and that is force.
The Justice Centre has filed an appeal of the fine given to Pastor James Coates and will further sue the Alberta government to fight the appalling and disgraceful seizure of a Christian church.